Hi, everyone. My name is Khalil Shanti.
Khalil, you're going to have a minute to pitch.
Yeah, sure.
And then we're going to give you feedback on your concept and your storytelling. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
What are you building?
All right, I'm building Atria. So Atria is a platform for architects and people in construction. Architects and developers, anyone in construction, have to deal with over 10,000 different building codes. Building codes, local zoning ordinances, and regulations. Everything from ADA regulations to federal building codes to NFPA, fire safety standard requirements. This data is all siloed in different sources and is really hard for people to compile and understand what they have to do to build compliantly. So we built Atria to collect all this data into one massive data set, parse it through into an artificial intelligence model, and given a project address as an architect or person in construction, you can essentially give us the your building program, your project address, and we'll tell you how to build whatever you're constructing compliantly.
Under a minute.
Cool.
Super interesting space. I remember in one of the first few episodes of the feedback loop, we had someone in this broad area, and I learned a lot about the space and how complex, it's obviously complex, but how much solving some of these problems would speed up the workflows. It's quite dramatic, again, from what I learned. So, just fascinated by this generally.
So I guess the question is, what's the alternative right now? How much time does it take to navigate this? What's the benefit compared to what common practice is for now?
Yeah, great question. So there actually is a competitor of ours called Upcodes, if anyone's ever heard of them. And they've been around Series A, YC backed since 2017. And they have also this data set of building codes. You have international codes, you have federal codes, and then you have local, you have like New York State. So if we want to talk just about New York, you're talking about state level code and then you're talking about local code. So you're talking about if I want to build something in Manhattan, I have to figure out what can I build compliantly to follow New York State code and then as granular as Manhattan building code. So Upcodes has all of this data set, but they don't get as granular as geospatial data and zoning. So if you're a developer, the first thing you want to do when you want to look for a property to develop is zoning. And you want to come in and be like, what can I build here feasibly? And how much money will that make me as a developer? So we integrate directly into geospatial data, combine that with a data set that Upcodes offers, but mesh all of that together and save developers and architects tens of hours of work. So an architect typically spends 40% of their time doing compliance-based research. And if you do a typical bottoms-up TAM approach, this is like a $50 billion market if you count like all the hours they spend, on this research.
Never share that number again. Those sorts of like bottoms up that like include people's salaries. I wouldn't, even though it's a big number, it doesn't convince me in the same way.
I was gonna mention that even though this is like a bottoms up number calculation, it's not a good number, and the reason why is because it doesn't address the software market, right? Of what is the TAM for software and architecture and construction, right? It's not $50 billion.
I was going to say also, like, you can imagine building projects are very high, but who's paying for it? Is it a firm set? Because like architects, from what I've gathered, are not insanely well paid. And so where does the budget come from?
Yeah, that's a great question too. They should be paid more for sure. It would, they definitely deserve it. And they definitely would rather spend their time designing rather than researching, right? But within our scope and our ICP, I guess, or the customers we want, as architects at the moment is our main priority, but it is developers and contractors and then all these construction firms. So the nice thing about our business model, and we actually spent we're 5 months in, we spent the first 2 months with this kind of a recurring subscription model, and it was like terrible, to be honest, because no one wants to pay a recurring subscription in construction and architecture, especially when they don't have projects.
So per project?
Yeah, it's per project. And the nice thing about that is the firm takes it on, they tag it on as a technology fee that they can send back to the client.
And what's the percentage? Is it like a percentage of overall project volume? Is it a percentage of square foot?
It's a flat fee, but there's different types of projects. So we like to say residential project is X fee, and then multi-site development is the largest. So that's like let's say like a large college campus or a franchise chain, that would be like the highest ticket price.
What's the comp to Upcodes? What are they charging? What are you charging?
Yeah, so Upcodes is actually not doing a per project basis. They actually offer just their data set directly in terms of like, hey, here's our they call their chat copilot. Here's our chat connected to our data set, or you can use our data set querying tool to like ask any like query any like building codes or federal and state level codes. And I believe their pricing is around like $100 a month to $20 a month at the very basic level. So yeah, they do have like pro suite tiers where they offer like multiple user accounts to like firms, but we don't operate in the same business model whatsoever. We're very much more granular because we actually do site and zoning. So because we integrate into geospatial data, we offer, you know, in our opinion, a lot more value, project specific than they do.
And just to ground it for people who might have less familiarity, what questions can you answer that they can't because of this geospatial data?
Yeah, exactly. So instead of upcodes with like a competitor like upcodes, you'd go up and ask them, you know, hey, I have a high-rise construction with X amount of units, you know, how many egress or like how many exits do I need per ADA, right? So that's a question they'll answer. They have the ADA regulations. Now, in our case, you give us that question, but you also give us your project address, and we'll tell you, hey, not just how many ADA requirements you need, but what your setbacks are, what your setbacks are for zoning, you know, granular stuff as soon as in terms of like feasibility, from everything from parking requirements to egress to fire safety, but also localized to the point of, hey, in New York City, you know, in the Manhattan or in this neighborhood in this borough, there's a interim zoning that you might have not been aware of that says, hey, actually you cannot have this many bathrooms or this many exits or a swimming pool here or this or that. And this is caught like from, we're essentially building this entire pre-designed platform to be extremely or project specific so we can catch any of these compliance issues on a much, much, much more project specific scale than they ever could. Really.
And question for you on the flip side is, on the geospatial data on the localized side, how unique is that technology compared to others that may be focusing just on that part of it?
Yeah, very good question. You know, it's not, to be very candid, like there are startups out there that are doing zoning analysis only, right? So there are a few out there that are doing zoning analysis, feasibility, and that's another big field. There are some doing just building code only, like upcodes, but no one has combined them all into one encompassing platform.
And why do you think they haven't?
It's hard.
And why is it easier for you?
I think me and my co-founder have the domain expertise. We are, you know, pretty armed and equipped to do so. We're seeing a lot of good traction in the jurisdictions that we do support. And the hard part is that it takes a while to support a new jurisdiction. So we started off in New Orleans.
So can you be more specific about you said we have the skills to do it. Like, what's the background? What's the context? What's the insight?
Yeah, sure. So I'm CTO, software engineer. And, you know, I'm in charge of the technical aspect, but my family has a history in construction. My co-founder is professor of architecture down at Tulane University in New Orleans and is an architect with a practice. So I feel like we're a decent team.
So I would lead with that.
Yeah.
Because I think what you have is you have clarity on the value proposition,
right? Understanding
the difference of that and the reason to believe are the other two parts. I think you have the sort of like, there's a book I had to read back in my entrepreneurship class in college where it's like, you have overt benefit, dramatic difference, and reason to believe. Like, I believe in the benefit, like I hear that, but why is this significantly different? I would say you have to go through those two, and saying, you know, the reason to believe is saying I come from a lineage of people in the construction side, and I'm pairing with somebody who has a background teaching architecture. You may not see a lot of founders. I think, again, giving the very specific edge that people can bet on for that. Because, like, yeah, I have seen 3 companies in the last quarter that were in zoning analysis. One called Zonomics, one called CityBlock, and another one that I'm forgetting about. It's like saying, here's the insights that we're seeing. That's where it comes in. And I think that legacy, maybe you were hesitant to say, like, I come from a background in construction from the family side, but like I invested in a 4th generation waste hauler who knew waste hauling better than anybody else, and he built stuff from the ground up. Don't undersell that part, because not only does that help you on your just osmotic expertise, but also credibility when you're trying to get osmotics. Like,
like osmosis?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I don't know if that's actually the proper
I like it.
variation of
make
it.
it.
But yeah. But like, don't undersell that, I think, because that gives more clarity as to, okay, why are you taking this tact versus everybody else who's gone either on the broader code compliance side or on the very granular zoning side, and saying we know how to integrate these two because we are literally bringing the perspective that 2 people have integrated these before.
Yeah. My question for you, and then I have 3 pieces of feedback. Where are you getting this data you keep referring to this geospatial data. I assume sometimes it's from them because they're uploading their work. But when it's not that, where is it coming from?
Yeah, very good question. So it's so many different data sources. So geospatial data is lives within like the city usually. So each city has a GIS team. And actually, there's another startup some people might have heard of here. They're doing pretty successful. They're called Regrid, and that's their entire product is to sell zoning APIs. And they sell them for a lot of money. And essentially, there's a big problem in the United States where every GIS team in each city does not communicate with one another. So they're all like not unified. And if you actually unify them into like one data source, you make a lot of money, which is what Regrid did. So that's one aspect of our data. Are the data sets of building codes and compliance codes is also very, very siloed. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question in terms of.
So a couple pieces of feedback. The first is this might be trivial, but there was a point at which you were talking about the pricing per project.
Yeah.
And you started by saying people don't like subscription. Then you said because they don't always have a project. You should start. I know this is a small thing to pick on, but I think people, not just you, but all founders in general benefit. Sequencing here is important. Start by saying because of the cyclical nature where you might not always have a project if you're an architect, because when you said people don't like subscription, my brain immediately went, yeah, they do, or some people do. And I immediately understood when you said the next sentence, but you don't even want that moment of like me going, weird thing you just said. So just small sequencing tip. On the geospatial thing, I think this is essential too.
Right.
So in addition to what you enable somebody to do, I need to understand how you're going to do it. I like your answer, right? So there's some public data that is disaggregated that you're going to collect, and there's a sense to which you have demonstrated, okay, you have an understanding, and going back to the person you are, you have an understanding of how to kind of gather it. The third bit here, and this is like an overall, I think we got stuck in this conversation about this competitor and your specific features. And this is something that I give a lot of founders feedback on, and again, job seekers in the context of free agency, my startup. Sometimes a question is an invitation rather than a question, or at least you can take it that way. And this is politicians are the typical people who do this, where they hear a question and they decide how they want to answer. And the reason I do that in this case, when he asked, do you have competitors? And you might still, in your brain, you'd be using the main one. I actually like that you went for the most direct thing, which is your most direct competitor. In some sense, that was brave. But in some sense, it made the questions and answers very specific. I think saying, hey, there are a variety of competitors, all the way from major players that are doing this basic thing, all the way to there's some startups that are actually competing almost directly with us, except they don't have geospatial. So you still be referring to them, but we wouldn't get into this very collided, at least in an initial conversation about them in particular and the differentiation, which would allow you then in other versions of storytelling to not always be comparing. I feel like we heard, was it Upzone? Upcredits?
Oh, upcodes. Yeah.
Yeah. We heard their name a few too many times, right? And again, in the context of an outside meeting where you're with an investor, it's just kind of like, think, how do you use that to say, here are the types of competitors? And you still might get some of the same sequence of questions, but you'll always now get to answer broadly of, okay, do they do this thing is not the question. It's, can competitors do this? And you get to say, well, they can, but here's our approach instead. Or they can, but here's where our moat will be. So just think again, questions can sometimes be invitations.
Awesome.
Anything else? Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.